Hello everyone, this is Heroes Trivia. Welcome back to our semifinal rounds here in Season 3 of our Subscriber Game Tournament as we continue with our matchup between Sleeping Phoenix and Will Be Deed. So this is going to be match 2 between the two players as Will Be Deed takes a win in their first match on the map selected by Sleeping Phoenix. There was some really good ideas with the forests and the use of the Stalker passive on Yanyu from Sleeping Phoenix, but it didn't come together as his Lu Bu usage was not ideal, especially running into 3 very aggressive generals from Will Be Deed. And now we're on match 2, where we're going to play on a map selected by Will Be Deed. It's a pretty flat open map. There are some intraversable lakes in the middle, small patches of lake creating these gaps, and we'll see how he decides to use them. But first, we have the pick and bans. So this time, as it's a map picked by Will Be Deed, he'll be kicking us off, and we have a ban of Mu Lu, followed by Yuan Shao, Liu Chong, Zhang Jiao, Yan Baihu, and Sun Jian. So Will Be Deed is banning out basically elephants and range abilities and a bit of stock from Yan Baihu as well. Definitely viable bans with these impassable lakes. These range abilities are going to be even stronger because you can technically do show force from the other side of the lake, and you actually won't get chased down. So very interesting ban here. And the answer from Sleeping Phoenix, we have Yuan Shao going away, so morale booster. We have Messenger of Heaven being banned out with Zhang Jiao being banned. And I think we have a targeted ban in response to match 1 with Sun Jian being banned. Now personally, I don't think Sun Jian needs to be banned here because Sun Jian is probably picked as a replacement for Xu Huang in match 1 rather than having a core strategy revolving around Sun Jian. Xu Huang in every way is just a better version. The only thing you're kind of missing out is the guard passive from the units, but with Xu Huang still up, Sun Jian ban in response to their first match I feel is a misplay here. But we'll see the first picks as Will Be Deed is not going to snatch up Xu Huang, who's still available, but instead he's going to pick up Wen Chou. So we are going to get a roar ability in, and the response from Sleeping Phoenix is also a roar ability in Sun Ce. So both roar abilities heavy hitting, minus 50 from Sun Ce's roar and minus 30 from Wen Chou's roar, just different usage limits. Both great generals. Vanguard on Sun Ce, a little bit lower health, but he has better abilities in terms of the smash ability of Flame the Phoenix versus Wen Chou, who has to be more or less dismounted to use hamstring to achieve the same effect, but a lot more health on Wen Chou. Then for the next round of bans, we have a slight issue in that the bans, I was informed from the players, only said Taishi Ci in this round. So I know for a fact that one of the players banned Taishi Ci, and from the rest of the draft, what I can assume is that there was also a ban on Lu Bu. So I'm not actually sure what happened here. I'm assuming this is the case where we're getting a ban of Taishi Ci, which is definitely a good general. We have Hail of Arrow ability usage, Venomous Shots also very good against infantry, and Lu Bu being a general used by both players last match, getting banned here makes total sense. And that leaves us with a pick starting with Sleeping Phoenix, and he's going to grab Yan Liang, and that's going to be answered by Zhang Bao from Will Be Deed. So this is a really odd pick in my opinion. Yan Liang feels like a weird general to pick here, not only by himself. I don't think Yan Liang is that strong by himself. His unit availability is not super great either. And in addition, this is going to be the second Vanguard generals in a row on Sleeping Phoenix. So we're going to start with Sun Ce being picked, and now we end up with Yan Liang being the second pick. So doubling down of Vanguards, who are both not unbreakable, seems very risky. You're running into a situation where your enemy might be predicting heavy cavalries, bringing some spears, especially with Huang Fusong still available to be picked. Defender of Empires seems like a great choice, even though we are going to get double Flame of the Phoenix smash abilities from these generals. They're just going to be a little bit lower health, and they're also not unbreakable, so they might end up getting army lost at the end here. We'll see how things play out, but the response of Zhang Bao is also curious. Usually when you see Zhang Bao, you're thinking Yao Guai Hunter, and on this map where you do have some lakes, perhaps Yao Guai Hunter is going to work, but aside from that, there is a wide variety of yellow turban units that can be picked here, so hard to make a read. And the last round of ban here, we have a ban of Sima Yue from Will Be Deed, which is really odd. I think Sima Yue is sort of the third tier sentinel here. You start with Xu Huang, and then if he's banned, you go to Sun Jian, and if Sun Jian's banned, then you go to Sima Yue, because you end up with a very similar unbreakable sentinel with Flame the Phoenix. The problem with Sima Yue is his units are not great compared to what's available for Xu Huang and what's available for Sun Jian. And his weapon choices and his items are not as good and unique as Xu Huang and Sun Jian. So he's probably tier 3 here. Seeing him banned with Xu Huang still up is very odd. And then for Sleeping Phoenix, we have a ban of Zhang Fei, which also slightly confuses me a bit, because it is true that he's running double vanguards who are not unbreakable, and Zhang Fei's roar would devastate his generals. But I would have thought that maybe Sleeping Phoenix were trying to pull a Zhang Fei comp with triple vanguards or triple vanguard generals and fast cavalry. But that's not the case. He's protecting against it because he sees Ventral being picked. But I don't like this ban here. It doesn't make a lot of sense, especially combine that with Yan Liang's pick before. I can't imagine what Sleeping Phoenix want to do here. But let's see their last pick. As with Xu Huang still up, Will Be Deed is going to snatch up Xu Huang for free. And we're not going to grab a mirror matchup here for the last third pick this time, like we did last time with Lu Bu up and both players going with Lu Bu. Sleeping Phoenix going to go with Zheng Jiang. So we have a bandit. Now Zheng Jiang does not offer the same mending. She has a poison dagger ability, which is very high damage but hard to hit. High health, but also not unbreakable. So the morale issue for Sleeping Phoenix is going to be very apparent, as he does bring it up himself with the selection or the ban of Zhang Fei just the turn before. And with Xu Huang being picked up, you now can combine the Roar of the Beast on Xu Huang as well as the Xiezhi Roar from Ventral. And that's going to combine for a negative 48 morale hit if used together. And that's just a big hit. It's going to be on par with Sun Ce's Roar, and you get 4 uses of that matched to 2 uses, and then infinite uses of Roar of the Beast after that from Xu Huang. So the morale of Sleeping Phoenix's army is going to be a real concern. Also, the morale of Will Be Deed's army needs to be really mindful too, because that's Sun Ce's win condition. So we'll see what kind of units they pick here to kind of answer these questions. And we have some really interesting unit choices coming from Will Be Deed. So those 6 units there are Exemplar of Dao. Not a very common unit in campaign or in multiplayer. They have decent defensive stats. Their offense is okay. They're basically melee infantry here, mace users with a shield. But I think they're picked here for their excellent health. They do have higher per unit health than other standard infantry. And probably more importantly, they have very high base morale. I think their morale are in the high 60s, if not in the 70s. So they can withstand roars, because I think Sleeping Phoenix is... I think the only thing I can think of is doubling the roar ability of his 2 vanguards, because he can also stack a roar on top of Sun Ce's roar for maybe like 68 effect, and then use cheap chase downs, and both sides kind of trying to do that. And then Xu Huang is the only general that's unbreakable here, so that definitely favors Will Be Deed a little bit, and these high morale units can withstand that. So it seems like Will Be Deed kind of knows what he's up against in terms of the morale game by selecting these infantry, and also he knows that because he has cavalry as the rest of the unit, maybe there might be a lot of spears, or they might be expecting a lot of spears, because the mind game here is Sleeping Phoenix probably feels that he has 2 vanguards, so Will Be Deed's read will be, let's bring polearm units to counter that. And then you can see that Sleeping Phoenix actually didn't go cavalry on his 2 vanguards, which is super shocking. He went with the cheaper peasant cav on, not the peasant cav, the bandit raiders on Zhengjiang. So to get cheaper cavalry, he went with a bandit character who's not a vanguard to pick up some more cavalry. And instead, you see the melee infantry spam, the Liyang infantry from Yanliang. They have a very cool active ability that gives them a massive boost, so they are pretty good in combat. And both sides sort of read that the other side is likely to take spears, or Sleeping Phoenix read that Will Be Deed is going to take spears, so he brought melee infantry instead, and Will Be Deed read that Sleeping Phoenix will do that, and instead of bringing more spears, he actually brought melee infantry. Or it could just be he's bringing in these high morale units. But either way, impressive draft from both players. We have some more premium cavalry units with slight upgrades on Vengeful from Will Be Deed versus a bunch of infantry of Sleeping Phoenix, and we end up with both sides with not much anti-cav. There's a little bit of range sprinkled in with a cavalry unit as well as Zhengjiang's unique unit. They don't do much. And then we have 2 Tiger Guard who's really there for the general support. And then just a bunch of melee infantry and some cheap calves from Sleeping Phoenix, slightly more expensive cav from Will Be Deed. And we'll see how things play out. I think Sleeping Phoenix side actually have a huge morale problem. There's not a single unit with high morale on his side, and all the generals are breakable. So the Roar combination could be super devastating to his army, and we'll see how he plays around that, as his comp really is also a morale comp as well. So we'll see these clashes and see how it plays out on the deployment. So hopping into game here, we have a Vanguard deployment here on both sides. This is Will Be Deed's initial deployment area, and he picked this map for these 2 lakes. So essentially, if you sit in the middle here, you have a pretty decent protection on both flanks, and you get a natural choke here. And range could do a number on this map. That's why Liu Chong is banned, because he could just sit on the other side of the lake and shoot you. Sleeping Phoenix not playing that game. He's shifted his entire army behind, and they're going to be charging. Hidden Axes in the front, kind of invisible units, and they're probably just going to go straight for them. We have these 2 Northern Lancers, or actually these 4 Northern Lancers being put in the back. I think they were meant to sneak behind if they had been a normal deployment. Now they're just kind of on the opposite side of the map at the start, and we'll see how that goes. So I think with Vanguard deployment, you definitely can flip map advantages on its head. But this one isn't so bad. I think this is the narrowest choke you can have, with both of these being impassable. Is that a... that's a grass. But yeah, essentially we have a charge. I'm still curious why Yanliang is brought. It's essentially a very basic Vanguard general with low stats. Dong Zhuo would have been better in my opinion. Even someone like Gong Sun Zan might be better. If the pick was meant to bring Liyang infantry, I don't know if they're actually worth it. You have high charge on these infantry, and this is the ability, do or die. You get a 25% boost of all your combat stats. So damage goes up 25%. It's not a huge damage. The charge going up 25% is the best part. The evasion's high on these. That's basically what they're for. You can see exemplars of the Dao. High morale. Okay, 52. Not super high, but I think we do have Nature's Ally. It puts them at 71 with the bonuses when the generals are close. That's going to be enough to withstand the Roar combination. That's really what you need. You need high base morale. Because if you look on this side, the morales are not great on any of the units. Why are the infantry not up? The infantry actually has respectable morale. 3-on-1 on Sun Ce. Why is Sun Ce abandoned? Are they just trying to roar? Like I said, they have high morale. This is a very poor choice. So Sun Ce basically dies for this. He's not going to come back. Just to get this charge in for the roar. These units are going to bounce back almost instantly once that effect ends because they're not being chased by enemy cavalry. Because the cavalry re-engage happened. They need to chase, basically, if they want to get rid of these expensive infantry. They're trying to chase. They're trying to do sustained damage to prevent a bounce back. Those 4 Northern Lancers come back. We get a little bit of archery shots on them. Not really much. Just a very disjointed charge. If the infantry charged first, cavalry came in later, you can still pull the roar off. That was sort of just a one-shot go, and Sun Ce paid it with his life, which I don't think is worth it. These bandit raiders are just not as premium, and they're not going to trade well into the enemy cavalry. We got the poison. Could have forced that fight like that instead of sacrificing Sun Ce right off the bat. There's 2 roars, not just one. Like in that case, Zhang Fei would be so much better because you actually knock out at least Wen Chou. It's being boosted. He's not actually unbreakable. Zhang Bao actually is unbreakable, it seems. Yeah, another Vanguard, just dropping the health, getting chased down. The roar effect stacking, so you got the 48. It's hard to, like, normally he'd be fine. But because of the roar effect stacking, he's actually out too. It's a very similar idea on both comp, just using the roars to break enemy units and generals. But one side just have better generals for that. That's why Yan'an feels like a weird choice. The units were disjointed. Could have gone with Zhang Fei. Instead of banning him, pick him the turn before. You get a roar that's much scarier. It doesn't matter how high the morale is. This is a 100-point hit. And then you chase down with Zhang Fei using cheap cavalry instead of forcing a Zhengjiang pick. Which I don't think brings much unless you actually hit your poisoned blade. I don't think she was being used for that purpose. Now she's just basically being kited non-stop. The infantries make it here, but you can see Wobi is actually pulling his units. He knows he can't beat these infantry, but he can smash them repeatedly and kill them. And he's trying to basically buy time for his troops to not really engage and just try to break things up here with his generals. This is very much a replay of last match, where he just gets ahead with the generals and keeps the general together and just smashes the enemy infantry. It's even easier for this one because these Liang infantry are not going to knock any of his generals off their horses. So the Tiger Guards, who's meant to protect the generals, never was up with the generals. Seems like a poor pick. One handmade guard would have been a better choice. They're taking over. We didn't have any active of the do or die, so that was wasted. No charge bonus being added. Zhengjiang's trying to return whatever damage she could, but things are definitely not in her favor. She's not unbreakable. They can completely ignore Zhengjiang, let her do whatever she wants, kill off these last few cavalry, and it's all over. Yeah, the Exemplars are going to take the fights. We have active, finally, the boost. It's 1 minute. They actually don't need to chase that. They can just pull back, win the fight over here. But I don't know if they can win with just the generals around. It's going to be difficult. Yeah, I guess there's no army loss scenario either. Even if they do chase this and Sleeping Phoenix do take out the enemy cavalry here and the enemy unit, 2 of these generals are unbreakable. And that's enough. Zhang Bao has, both of them have relative full health. Zhang Bao lost about 3k. 80k combined versus the 40k left on Zhengjiang. They'll be fine. And the units are just getting picked off at this point. Zhengjiang has to kill the cavalry. She's the only thing that can catch it. And then the units have to rally around her. Hopefully not fight near walls or edges of the map. Not walls, but edges of the map. Hidden Axe getting chased down. They're being sent over. There was just a very disjointed attack with Sun Ce. He basically suicided to get a roar off that maybe took away 2 or 3 exemplars of the doll. That's not a fair trade. The units could advance together. There was no range threats. It's a very disjointed effort, gave up a lot of advantages. There's still a decent amount of units on both sides, just the general difference might be too massive at this point. Still a couple roars left, I think. I think I remember seeing 2 being used. 1 against the generals, 1 against the units. Still have a decent amount of the bow left. I just can't imagine Zhengjiang coming back from this 1v3. Double Tiger Guards? Maybe? Although I highly doubt it. I don't think the axe is going to make any difference.
是的，是的，好，行进，向前进军，赶快，前进，加快速度，跑起来，抓紧。
Yeah, they have slightly higher per unit health. I think normally infantry 72k, they start out with 86k. Not a big issue. Still has a bow. He can snipe a little. Maybe try to throw a dagger? Use it or lose it. Got a couple shot. I think maybe 1 hit. Now we're kiting it. The Nature's Ally, plus how high their base morale on these are, really helps. WBD just going for the units. He knows if he routes the units is over. She will just army loss. They don't have to fight her, but if they do fight her, they're fine. Ideally not around the Tiger Guard. That's probably the only thing. Trying to route the Tiger Guard with the roar combination. Yeah, there we go. Double roar combination. Tiger Guard's gone. Oh, poison dagger. Oh, I think we got a hit. Did the unit get hit instead? Yeah, hit the unit. Friendly fire, but it's fine. Army lost there, and it's over. Great fight. Both players had similar ideas of how to approach this. I think there was a little bit of evolving strategies during the pick and ban draft phase. But in the end here, WBD will be taking this win through very smart unit selection and general selection. I think Zhang Bao, as that pick for the second pick there, really helped. Xu Huang slipping through the entire draft makes no sense to me. He is hands down one of the strongest generals in the game for pick and ban phase, or for any battles in general. Unbreakable with roar ability, slam ability, acceleration on chases, decent speed, and a very good weapon on top of that, unbreakable. The fact that we saw bans on Sun Jian and Sima Yue while Xu Huang was still up feels kind of wrong. And both sides did sort of this combination roar setup, except I would argue that Xu Huang as that Roar of the Beast option is hands down a lot better than Yan Liang as the counterpart, and Wen Chou and Sun Ce are similar. I think they bring pretty much the same thing to the table, but one just have way more health, while Sun Ce has a decent Flame of the Phoenix for sustained damage afterward, a slightly more interesting roster, even though arguably I don't think the best unit came from his roster with the 2 Tiger Guard that were not even marched up with the generals. The infantry should have just done their charge on the enemy infantry, should have just had the, collide of the infantry and then the roars come in on top. The risk obviously being the enemy doing the same type of roar strategy to you, but I think that's where the third pick comes in really key. Xu Huang was picked because he himself is unbreakable and can clear a lot of units by himself, and also good in general combat. If we have the case here where we're going to see a lot of cheap unit from Sleeping Phoenix side, then that third pick might have been better off as a commander, because you end up getting someone who has the ability to boost the entire army to get temporary unbreakable stats, and that can tide the units over, at least for that initial charge, or at least time out the enemy ability usage timing, and then go from there. So that part was a real shame. I don't think Zhengjiang was the answer. Getting more cheap units with low morale is probably not the answer. But a great game from both players, as Will Be Deed will be moving on to the finals, facing Trevinicus for that coveted champion that has slipped Will Be Deed's hand, both in Season 1 and Season 2. So we'll see how things go for him this season, as we'll have the finals tomorrow. It will be a best out of 3 format. It will have alternating siege, except this time we're not going to be doing settlements. We're not going to be doing gate pass battles. We're going to be doing an actual Nanman settlement. So for once, we're not going to have a victory point, and both sides can fight inside or outside if they want, as the goal is to just wipe out the enemy army. It'd be a different change. Those Nanman settlements offer some very interesting defensive positions, as you have those suspension wooden bridges where you can kind of shoot down. There's also elevation difference inside, so you can choose to give up your towers and then fight inside, or you can maybe even choose to fight outside and have your towers aid you, and then go back, fall back into the settlement afterwards if it doesn't look well, and see if the towers can help bring things back. But it's a very interesting setup, and look forward to seeing how these players approach that. Of course, if they're tied after those 2 matches, we'll be going back to this third map used here, the waterfall map, for the final tiebreaker match. See if they have a better chance with their blind picks on the open field, and determine our Season 3 champ. So hope you guys are looking forward to that, and I'll see you guys then. Bye!